Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Epic Scholars. Welcome back to Epic University. This is Brady Clark coming to you. And in this section, we're going to be going over supply and demand. All right, I'm going to be showing you basically my method, my application of using supply and demand. Because, just like any form of technical analysis, there's multiple ways of applying it. And so I'm just going to show you my viewpoint and the way I apply it into my own trading. And supply and demand, it's not a very difficult concept to grasp, right? It's fairly straightforward. And assuming that you already have a pretty basic understanding of support and resistance. But at this point in the university, you should have already gone over the content of support and resistance and have a pretty good understanding of that. So going forward, supply and demand is going to be a pretty, easy concept to understand. Now, one, very important thing to keep in mind with supply and demand is that it's very similar to support and resistance. In fact, supply and demand is just a method of support and resistance. Okay, and in support and resistance, there's one rule, or one rule to keep in mind, I should say. And that is what was once support, it becomes resistance. Okay, just like this level over here was used as support for a little while, and then eventually we had a snap, and price came back and began using it as resistance. Okay, and it would be the same way on the flip side. What initially acts as resistance will eventually become support. Okay, and it goes the same exact way with supply and demand, right? Supply levels will eventually become demand levels, and demand levels will eventually become supply levels. And the biggest understanding, or the biggest way to really break this down, is that supply and demand levels are essentially larger areas of support and resistance. All right, and the main things that I'm looking for when I'm plotting on my supply and demand levels are essentially zones. So rather than, one specific price point, I'm looking at a larger area to be able to get a better view of it. And so the biggest thing that I look for is I want to see an area where price is being tested from both the highs and from the lows. And oftentimes we'll have, big wick action poking into those areas. Okay, and one example of that would be coming right through there where I had that level drawn in, like so. And we'll see, it's a much bigger area than one specific line of support and resistance. Sometimes price will, just wick into the zone. Sometimes price will come partially into the zone before reversing around. Sometimes price will come all the way to the other side of the supply and demand level before using it. But the main thing we're looking for is just that larger area where price is consistently being tested from both the highs and the lows, and we're going to see a lot of wick action coming through there. Okay, and I'll show you a few different examples. We're sitting here on Euro AUD, and just like I said, the 4-hour time frames where I'm always plotting in my supply and demand levels. Okay, and here would be another nice example. Just like so. And we can see here, price is being tested from the lows. We have price being tested from the highs, from the lows again. And we can see a nice amount of wick action coming through there. Long poke up through there, through there, through there. And sometimes I will use one specific wick body to draw out my supply and demand. What I mean by that is, if I use the complete height of this wick right here, right, sometimes I will be able to take that approach and use the exact height of a specific wick to draw my supply and demand, but I don't always have that opportunity. But I just feel when I do have my areas locked in, like so, it just provides a little bit more accuracy. Okay, but there would be another brief example of supply and demand. Nice level coming through here, just like so. And I mean, for me personally, and for a lot of other traders, support and resistance is a little bit, complicated to understand for the simple reason that a lot of times when we do have one specific price point line drawn in, there can be, potential fake outs and candles breaking out briefly that will confuse traders a little bit, especially traders who are just getting into their first couple of months. And so from what I've seen, is that a lot of traders will have a bit better of a viewpoint when they start using supply and demand rather than plain old simple support and resistance. And, nothing against either. It's all really just personal preference. Another nice level coming through here, just like so. We can see this level if we drag it across. As you can see, there's a little bit room for stretch there. But it's really just providing that extra guidance. It's really just an additional confluence that you could use in conjunction with your trading. Okay, so if you saw, we have this level in here, this level of supply and demand through here, and we see price coming back to that area. So when we see price coming back to that area, we can expect that, maybe not right away. Price might not come in and just shoot right off. But as price comes into that level, it's going to slowly potentially start rounding off, wicking into the zone, and make its move back up to the upside. Okay. Let's check out a different pair here. Sticking with the 4-hour time frame. Always sticking with the 4-hour time frame, just personal preference. Right away, I see a nice, beautiful level coming through here. Even right now, price is testing into this supply and demand level here. Okay, and you would never want to enter a trade just off of supply and demand, right? Just like any type of technical analysis component. But it provides that good, guidance that as we enter this zone here, price could begin to roll off and move back into the downside. Or similarly, to support and resistance, have its breach through and begin using this level as that support. Okay, and just to recap, as I said, supply and demand, there's multiple ways of applying it, and this is just the way that I use it in my own specific trading. I have for years and years now, and it's a very helpful guide and a helpful confluence to be able to find more accuracy in my trading. Now, just like support and resistance, supply and demand levels don't have to be both, right? Supply and demand level, it doesn't have to be a supply and a demand level. It can simply be a supply level or a demand level. And same thing I'm kind of looking for, but obviously price isn't going to be tested as much from the highs and the lows, but rather one of the two. But I'm looking for still the same, the long wick action. So for example, at the highs over here. Right, not one specific line. And this would be a good example of why supply and demand might be able to provide a little bit more guidance and a better viewpoint to it, because if we had one specific price point here, we'll see that all of these reversals that are happening, they're all kind of at staggered levels, right? It'd be hard to pinpoint one specific support and resistance level to plot in here other than the very tips of the wicks at the top here. And so it would be hard to justify, all right, when this price point comes in, is it rolling over now, or is it going to come back in and make another high? Is it going to come back in? Could it go even higher, right? Is it rolling over yet, or is it even at its highest point? And so this will provide a little bit more guidance to be able to see, it might not necessarily reverse at one specific price point, but in this general vicinity is where we can look to take those rejections away from. Spotted a few different levels here. Let's hop to AUD USD. Okay, here we have a nice level coming in. Just showing a little bit of the application here to give a little bit of a better understanding of what we're looking for the levels. You could even have a little bit of one in here. Just like so. Okay, so remember, supply levels, same as demand levels, right? What was once support becomes resistance, and it goes hand in hand here with supply and demand. Okay, but that's pretty much, the general way that I go ahead and apply my supply and demand. Like I said, always a 4-hour time frame. And you can tweak this with this a little bit, especially because we have numerous educators that use different forms of supply and demand and apply it in different ways. So it's all personal preference, but I hope this gave you a little bit of a better understanding of supply and demand and how you can use it as additional confluence in your trading. With that being said, I appreciate you guys for tuning into this section of Epic University. This is Brady Clark, and I will see you next time.